Good afternoon and welcome everybody to 13 Now. I'm Amy Hoyt. We are live in our News 13 newsroom with a special interview this afternoon. As you know, on the 13th of every month, we call it Buddy Check, and we remind women to check for lumps in their breasts as a part of breast cancer awareness, trying to save lives. And if you catch that lump early, your chances are much better of survival. Today we have a breast cancer survivor. She is a Bay County resident. She doesn't live in Bay County anymore, but she was born and raised here, and everybody knows her. Her name is Doris McManus, and Doris has come to share her story today. She's been going through this for the last about over a year now.
Year and a half.
And I just have to tell everybody, Doris, just off the top, in the interest of full disclosure, that Doris and I have been friends since we were 19. So we know each other pretty well.
8 years ago.
Yes, 8 years ago. That's good, Doris. That's why we're friends. All right, let's talk a little bit about how you discovered the lump. This was something you did find on your own.
Yes, I was asleep one night and I actually woke up itching. And I went to scratch and I'm like, that's a lump. And I went back to sleep and forgot about it. And 3 nights later, I woke up with the same issue. So I got my phone out and I wrote Buddy Check in my phone for Saturday morning. And I checked and sure enough there was a lump.
Okay, so where do you go from there? That has to be kind of an awkward feeling, I
That
think.
was a really awkward feeling. I had had scares before just from what doctors thought they'd found, but nothing that had ever come to fruition. I ended up calling my doctor on Tuesday morning and he scheduled me immediately for a mammogram. The mammogram showed that there was a lump indeed, and they did the digital imaging and all that, and then he ordered a biopsy. The biopsy was making it pretty real at that point. And then on October 30th, I was at work, and my doctor's office called, and he said, Doris, this is Dr. McKinney, and I don't really have the news that I thought we would. You have breast cancer.
And those are the words no one ever wants to hear. And I know it was a surprise to you because this does not run in the family.
No, we didn't have any cancer of any type in our family, nor did we have, the gene or anything, any breast cancer or hip cancer. So the whole time of waiting for the results and everything, I just figured that it would be another one of those, not really what we thought it was. So,
Right.
Everything's good. Just come back in a year.
And just to back it up a little bit, was it a year prior to that where you thought
Yes.
there was a lump?
I had, yes, actually for 2 years prior to that. I was coming here. I saw a doctor on Monday before Michael even, and she said, you need to go to Bay Radiology, and I ended up having to go to Fort Walton, and that was even scarier than this one because that one made me just think, there's not really anything there.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about, you get your initial diagnosis, but you have such a good spirit. Now I want to show the picture of you and Mr. McManus, Don, who I've also known since I was 19. And you went to your Rutherford High School class reunion here.
Yes, we did. On November 9th, we had our reunion, and I had just found out. So I said, we're going. There's no breast cancer allowed at the reunion. So I didn't say anything to anybody because I was beginning treatments on Monday, and I just wanted it to be no cancer-free. It was a cancer-free zone.
Now your reunion was 2019, was this 2019?
Yes.
Yes, okay, 2019, I got my,
Right.
I keep thinking of Hurricane Michael, that was 18.
Right.
All right, so you go to the reunion, you have a good time, and now, but I know this is still in the back of your mind, obviously, because you just received the diagnosis.
Right.
Where do you go from here?
I had gotten an appointment. My daughter-in-law jumped in and starts making appointments like crazy. My family was so supportive and just, taking good care of me. I had been carrying my iPhone I carried my phone in my bra for years, and I was told, don't do that.
By a really good friend.
By just about everyone was
Everybody.
telling me that, and I continued to do it, and that, by the way, is exactly where the lump was.
And did you ask the doctors about that?
I asked when I went for the biopsy, and they said that they had several people that had been in that had the same story. Although it hasn't been proved,
Right.
It just,
It's a big coincidence.
Yeah.
And when you and I used to joke about it, and I'd say, don't put your
Yeah.
phone there, I was thinking, your heart, never dreaming potentially breast cancer. And again, there's no research to prove that, but the coincidence is kind of a little bit unnerving.
Actually, yes, very much so.
All right, so now they want you to do chemotherapy first,
Right.
correct?
I went to the surgeon, and he told me, the options through the surgeon, because that appointment just actually fell first before the oncologist. We were waiting on an appointment with the oncologist, and I ended up getting to see the oncologist on the 11th of November, and then the surgeon put me a port in on Friday, and I began chemo treatment on Monday, the 18th. So everything just went really fast, whereas normally you're hearing the stories of everything going so slowly.
Was it at that point they told you what type of cancer it was?
He told me when he called me on the 30th of October that it was invasive ductal carcinoma. We found out the next day that it was also triple negative breast cancer, which means that it's not responsive to any of the hormonal treatments that you usually use to fight cancer. So no estrogen, progesterone, or HER2 hormone could help it. So we had less of an arsenal to fight it with.
And this put you at higher risk?
Yes, the thing they normally do when you have the triple negative is begin chemo first instead of surgery. Sometimes you have surgery first or radiation, but they said chemo first, and then surgery, and then a possible radiation.
How long was the chemo at that point?
I began with 4 rounds, which was every 2 weeks, of adriamycin, and that is this blood red. They had said that it was called the devil's blood, and I said, no, we're going to call that the blood of Jesus. I'm not running the devil's blood through my veins. So that was my hair immediately. I would just touch it, and it was just coming out like crazy. And I'm a little OCD, didn't want hair in my food, so I'm like, okay. One morning I'd go outside and I'd shake my head and make it all come out, but it was still like I wasn't losing any, even though it was everywhere. So I ended up just cutting it off, and
I think we have a picture of that.
Then my son brought me in, and he shaved the rest of it for me. He actually met me at a doctor's appointment, and he took his hat off, because my kids were always we always had a doctor's office full, and he took his hat off, and he had shaved his head first. So then he shaved all mine off. And
that's a good son.
He just said, why couldn't my head be as pretty as yours?
When he did that had to be emotional.
That was, yeah. There was a few emotional moments, mostly just the little tears to my eyes. I didn't have really, I think maybe 2 major breakdowns while going through this. And but yeah, my kids everybody, friends, family, everybody was so supportive.
And that makes a difference, doesn't it?
Makes a big difference.
All right, so you go for how many weeks with the chemo?
I had a total of 16 weeks of chemo. I had 4 with the tough stuff that was supposed to go in and start kicking it in the first place. And then I had a PET scan at that point. We had a PET scan to begin with, and then a PET scan after those. And it showed that it had shrank to half at that point. It was also a grade 3, but a stage 2, because it was over 2 centimeters. So then I had 12 weeks consecutive of Taxol, which every chemo drug has its own side effects. And
did you have any where you were fatigued?
I was very fatigued. That's mostly what the adriamycin did, which most people throw up. The first thing they gave me was a prescription for Zofran. I put it on my nightstand, had my little garbage can by the bed, just waiting on the nausea, and praise God I was able to remove that almost a year later.
Wow.
Never threw up, not once.
Yeah. Well, you're pretty strong. You're a strong woman, which is helpful. But still going through something like this is hard on anybody. And I do know that you have great support. We'll talk about that in a minute, talking about groups for women. Okay. All right. So now you finished that chemo, and then the surgery, you had to wait.
Right. I finished chemo March 31st, rang my bell, and then April 16th, my husband dropped me off in the Sacred Heart Hospital and said, see you later.
Because of the pandemic.
Because of the pandemic. So
that added stress, didn't it?
It should have, but I don't know. I just kept my positive outlook through this whole thing and my faith, and I knew that everything was going to be all right. I was getting out the next day, and I'm like, I get some me time. So it worked out well.
All right, so you do the surgery in April, and then what's next?
I had my checkup. He said everything went well, and then because of the pandemic, also I couldn't do reconstruction at that time because they had shut down all plastic surgery procedures at that point, and that was considered elective. So I am still waiting on that. That will probably be spring.
So even though you had breast cancer and they have to you did the double mastectomy?
Yes, I did. I chose that.
Why'd you choose that?
They had said that I could have a lumpectomy and just remove the lump. With this aggressive cancer that it is, I decided at that point, and it was in stages. It had to come from up here and here.
Yeah.
And so then I chose to just go ahead and have, at that point, one breast removed. And then my doctor's like,
while you're there,
you're 64 years old, so, you want to match that. So it's like, okay. So I did. I just felt like because of the, like I said, because of the aggressiveness, to go ahead and remove both.
You wanted to remove all risk.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned that you had a couple of breakdowns, which I would have had one every day. You're stronger than me, but at some point, it affects your psyche. Like, is it something that happened at home while you were by yourself? Did it happen at a time you didn't expect it to come flooding out?
One time driving down the road, and then and another time I just went and got in the shower, and I just cried and cried and cried and cried, and I got it all out, but I was shocked that there were no more breakdowns.
Yeah.
But it does mess with you, and being tired. I had a cousin going through cancer at that time, and he said the one thing you need to do is if you feel like you can't put one foot ahead of the other, don't try to. Yeah. And so I had to remember that.
What role did your faith play?
Oh, that was number one. And I feel like the prayer is what got me through and kept me strong, but it wasn't my prayers as much as the prayers of yours, my friends, my family. I had strangers. I would get cards in the mail from people I still don't know. Prayer groups, doctors groups were praying for me because my son and daughter-in-law had such a network of friends that there were people just everywhere praying for me.
That makes a big difference.
It
did for you.
A huge difference, absolutely.
Now, talking about support, were there other women that you got to speak to while you're going through this to ask what's next?
I had some, and I wished I had had more. I do have some regrets on not trying to reach out to more people. And I don't. If I hadn't had that strong family network, I don't know that I wouldn't have reached out further, because I did get information on support groups. But I wished I'd have kept a journal to help, for no other reason than to help other people going through it. It was hard to find someone with triple negative to begin with, and I have since found every case is just different. But even before the breast surgery, I wished that I had had someone that had been through it recently and said, this is what I just experienced. So I try to be there now for others that are going through that.
And that's why you're here today sharing your story, because I know it's going to touch a lot of women who may not even have a lump yet, or will remember to check for it, or may be going through it and are hearing your experience, and it'll help them. We talked about the pandemic, and your family couldn't go in with you. They had to drop you off in the parking lot.
Right.
How much did it mean to have some really good nurses and doctors?
I had great nurses. I had become friends with the ladies in the Women's Imaging Center there, and they come up and talk to me and stay in my room and help me because I had drain tubes, and I was like, I didn't know what these things were, and they were they were so supportive. Just made great friends through all of it, and they were there.
What's the recovery now? What after the surgery? You mentioned drain tubes. Without getting too graphic, can you kind of explain what they did?
Yeah, I just had drain tubes coming out my side, and I'd have to empty those morning and evening, every 12 hours. and keep a measurement so that the surgeon could, so that I'd take my little chart with me when I went back and saw him for my follow-up. But I had another dear friend. I've never met her. She was a client of ours at our office, and I started getting things in the mail. I started getting these robes and bras, mastectomy bras, and these shirts that were Velcro in the front, and they had the little bags on them in the inside, little pockets that held my drain tubes. And she just sent me so much, and her daughter was going through the same thing, and she was one that I had reached out to.
And she knew what to help
She
you
knew
with.
what I needed, and sent me little pillows that went under my arms for after the surgery, because there's just things that bother you that you don't think about. They look like little heart-shaped pillows, and you just put them under your arms, and they help support you and keep the pressure off.
It's amazing. Now, how long did it take to heal?
I'd still think that's still kind of a process.
Right.
Initially. You have a lot of, well, initially I got home and I'm waiting to not feel bad, and I'm still feeling really good. But after about 3 days, it kind of hit, and I realized what would make me comfortable, and just rest. And getting the drain tubes out after, because I think I had those a week. So you were able to do more after the tubes came out.
And other than because of the pandemic, other than doctor's appointments, you were quarantined at this point.
Yeah, I had actually started from my chemo treatment not being around the grandkids or the kids or anything, because they said a cold to someone else would be pneumonia for me because of the low blood cell count.
I think we have pictures of your beautiful grandchildren, at least the girls. There you are getting the chemo. And you were wearing a wig in that picture, correct?
Yes. I had 9 different wigs.
Did that make a difference, having the wigs?
It did to me, and then I found out I just sporting that head.
You were done.
It was, yep, I was through.
You look pretty good. Now, this is your surgery
That
picture.
is-
Do you remember that?
I had sent that selfie to my daughter because I was FaceTiming, and they're like, "You just had surgery," and I'm like, "And I'm feeling good," just watching TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wished I had sent you the one of my hand, because I noticed I'd taken a picture of the IV, and that was another side effect of the drug. My nails were black because the second chemo drug I was on turned my nails dark, and then the nails lift.
Oh.
And I ended up losing, and your toenails do the same, I ended up losing my 2 big toenails, are over half of them.
Wow.
And they're still recouping, and but my nails are just now getting back.
Wow. It's taken time, and I know you're still going through it. Now, you had to do chemo again, or you took the pills?
After I had the surgery and it was time to go back to my oncologist, I was like, oh, I'm getting released. My PET scan was clear. This was in July. It was the end of June. I went and saw my oncologist, and he said, I was just waiting on, you don't have to be seen again for 3 months. And he said, I don't feel right just letting you go, because this triple negative is aggressive to come back within the first 2 years, and first 2 to 3 years, and then after 5, the risk reduced dramatically. He said there was this drug called capecitabine that he wanted to put me on, and it was very, very aggressive med. In the beginning, I was on 4,000 milligrams a day, 2 in the morning, and 2,000 milligrams, which were 4 pills in the morning and 4 in the evening. I was doing that 2 weeks on and a week off. When the 3rd round in, I just felt like all the blood had drained from my body. I was weak. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. My hands and feet, my husband had to start washing the dishes. I couldn't be in hot water. My feet and the bottoms of my feet and the palms of my hands were peeling at like up to 4 layers a day, just peeling like crazy. I couldn't wear gloves. So this was the side effects from the capecitabine.
Did they stop you from taking it briefly?
So what I told him, I said I had to go and get an IV to get some fluids put back in my body. And he said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. I want you to stay off of it for 2 weeks and then start it. And he took me down to 3,000 milligrams a day and put me at just every other week instead of 2 weeks on and 1 week off. So that other week gave me time to recoup, and it worked out good. I saw that through. I was on those pills for 6 months, and then I saw him again, another PET scan, December 29th. Everything was clear.
Yeah.
So,
amen.
Now I'm there.
But now you're trying to begin the reconstructive process, and you had one. I don't know if you call it a surgery.
It was a called a fat transfer, where he pulled fat from my stomach actually and injected it into.
As a woman.
And I still, I know, I'm like, please take more. And he said, no, we might need it later. I said, I got plenty, and I had friends willing to donate. But yeah, he pulled that and he put it. The breast surgery was called skin sparing, where they'll be putting like expanders in there. So he needs the skin. It's like if you inserted something right up under your skin and you hit it hard enough, it would open. So you need the skin thick enough. So he pulled the fat to try to thicken that wall. And it did some, but he's kind of going another route now and looking at how he'll do it.
All right, so
that'll
still
be late
have
spring.
Another surgery or 2, maybe, or 3?
Oh, yeah.
It's a process, a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. It will be.
But now your hair has grown back. I know you were blonde for all the years. I was the brunette, you were the blonde. But you look fabulous. But I know that you didn't look like this through the process because you're exhausted and the medication and the surgery. But do you feel as good as you look now? You look like you now to me.
I'm still very fatigued. I can still, because the fatigue isn't just like, oh, I'm tired, I think I'll go sit down. It's a different fatigue.
Just constant?
And sometimes it's more in the afternoons, and like the last med affected my eyes so bad. Like I haven't been driving for several months now, just a little bit at the time. So my eyes get really blurry in the afternoon, so I just sit down. If the sun's shining, it's worse. Cloudy days, I can run around outside, but on sunshiny days, I mean, it's just like, I can't stand it outside.
Now, we talked about your grandchildren earlier, and I wanted to pull up the picture. These are the girls.
That's my girls.
You have a grandson, but these are the girls.
Yes.
Was this Easter? You were at a
That was
picnic?
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day.
We have a park. Our HOA has a park right on the bay, so we met there, and we weren't supposed to be all touching, but they have honey on them, and they're just kind of sticky, and I can't stand to not touch them.
It's near impossible to say no to a grandchild. And then there was another one where the oldest granddaughter is a cheerleader, and her team sort of wanted to do something for breast cancer. Is that right?
They did this every October, and
Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Right, and so they had all their little pink pom-poms, and so I got in the middle. There's a big pink ribbon painted on the field, and this was during the halftime thing, and they had their pink bows and their pink socks, and I got home. That was another breakdown.
Yeah,
I got
it was emotional.
home, and I was like, wow, I just hadn't thought about it, and I looked at all that pink, and that was hard.
Yeah, it was very sweet. Give your grandkids a shout out. Call them by name.
Okay. Well, I have the oldest in Crestview, which is Alex. She's 15, and then we have Annabelle. That's her pictured there, and she's 8. I have Trace as her brother, and he's the only grandson. He just kept wanting a boy in the family. And then I have Abigail and Addison. So they're all A's, so I go a lot.
It's supposed to make it easier, Grandma.
They're all adorable, I know that.
Yeah. Oh, man. You shared quite an experience with us today, and we appreciate it so much.
Thank
you know
you for
that I
having
love
me.
you because we've been friends for so long. What is the best advice, even for a stranger, that you would give today?
Faith first. Faith is
Paramount.
Faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So when you're feeling bad, you still just praise at that time, and leaning that strong support. If you have somebody going through it, I was talking to someone back here a while ago in your newsroom, and I told him one thing I learned. I just always go, "I'm good." How are you doing? I'm checking on you. I'm good. When you ask someone, make sure you're ready to hear,
Right.
because sometimes people really need to tell you how they're doing. And if people offer to help, take the help.
And join a support
You can
group. I
be-
know you would recommend that.
Yeah, I think hearing people going through the same thing you are makes a big difference. It would.
Well, sharing your story today is making a big difference in lives, I know. Tomorrow's Buddy Check here at News
Yep.
13 on the 13th of every month. And so we want to remind women to wear
Absolutely.
pink and to check for lumps in their breasts. And if you find one, do not hesitate. Call your doctor and get that mammogram.
Even if it doesn't run in your family, check it.
Absolutely. Yep, best piece of information probably today, because we all think it has to be in the family.
And don't
it
wear your
doesn't.
phone in your bra.
Carry your phone somewhere else. There's no scientific research,
That's
but
Yeah.
just common sense. Let's not. Yeah, we won't do that. I won't do that. All right, Doris McManus.
Thank you
appreciate
so much for
honey.
having
Thanks
me
for
today.
coming out.
Thank
All right.
you.
See y'all later.